And this is the syllabus. If you have seen syllabus of the exams related to DDA, there's a lot of history and also contemporary architecture, classical styles, civilization. So there's a lot that has to be covered in terms of how the exams look at history perspective, right? So to make it easier, what I've tried to do is that I've put up a timeline so that we look at things as they evolved. Sometimes they parallelly evolved, or sometimes they were happening at one thing at a time, right? So probably prehistory was the only period where you could see that there were groups of Homo sapiens occupying different parts of the world, and then there was movement which led to a mix of cultures being formed, right? So prehistory is where a very specific thing was happening at some point of time. But yeah, post that there are a lot of parallel developments that have happened. So yes, general rule that I keep in the class is that if you have any question while I'm teaching, you can ask it there and then, so that we don't have questions that go ahead till the end, and then whatever happened between that doubt and after that is blur because you were stuck at that point. So yeah, I encourage whenever you feel like asking a question, you can raise your hand, ask a question, and then once you're satisfied, we'll go ahead. Right? So for so I know I hope you know this is a demo lecture today. So we what I am going to take for demo today is industrial revolution. Generally, it's more contemporary or close to the timeline that we exist in. So agar abhi also I'm good with Hindi, English, and Marathi. So whichever language best suits you. But yeah, I'll keep switching in Hindi and English during the lecture mostly, right? So industrial revolution I've chosen because that's more related or more close to our timeline that we are in. So we're in 2025, and apart from so beginning of industrial revolution is looked at in somewhere around 1700, 1740s, 1760s or something like that. So not exactly close, still a couple of centuries away. बट यस मोर कॉन्टेम्प्ररी अगर हम उसको कंपेयर करेंगे कि प्री हिस्ट्री में क्या हो रहा था या ग्रीक कब आए थे, तो उस हिसाब से इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन काफी पास की चीज है, और वो जो प्रोडक्ट्स दैट केम आउट ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन आर स्टिल प्रोबेबली द मोस्ट यूज्ड or the raw materials for a lot of things that exist today or we do, right? So I've tried to take that as our demo lecture today so that it becomes a little more relatable to us. So industrial revolution and architecture, and why does industrial revolution has a part to play in architecture, or why is it a part of history in terms of that? तो जनरली अगर आप देखोगे तो एक एक डेवलपमेंट या एक तरह का डेवलपमेंट हो रहा होता है, एंड देन देयर इज अ डिसरप्शन, or there is a kind of change that brings a lot of revolutionary development in a sector. So today we can say that computers was one such change, right? Then we have AI today, that is one such change. So at that point of time, industrial revolution या mass production किसी भी चीज का was that kind of a change that brought a big revolutionary, it is a revolution, it is called an industrial revolution because it caused a revolution, it caused disruption in a lot of sectors. So now it's not just manufacturing कि आप बहुत बड़े इंडस्ट्रीज बना सकते हो और बहुत प्रोडक्ट है, बट ऑल्सो उस प्रोडक्ट का यूज केस जहाँ था वो वाले सारे सेक्टर्स में बहुत सारा चेंज आया, बहुत सारी कंट्रीज के इकोनॉमी में बहुत सारा चेंज आया. इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन जिन कंट्रीज में पहले आया या जहां से शुरू हुआ, those were the economies that developed and became developed countries much ahead of us, right? These are of course our rulers. ये जो इंग्लैंड वगैरह में जहाँ पे we say industrial revolution was first witnessed, or from where it began, ये सब these were our rulers. So of course it came to us quite later, but by that time इन लोगों ने अपना काफी एक्सपीरियंस इकट्ठा कर लिया था. They had started with that revolution, they had seen the ups and downs with it, they had started to also recognize how low can be the downs and what to do with them. So a lot of things they had already experienced when industrial revolution came to us, right? So if you remember, um, कि टेक्सटाइल मिल्स हुआ करते थे हमारे यहाँ पे, देन दे स्टार्टेड फिर वहां मशीनरी आने लगा, तो लोगों को बहुत डाउट था कि वो मशीनरी आ जाएगी फिर लोगों को कुछ काम नहीं मिलेगा, सो देयर वर बिग लेवल प्रोटेस्ट्स इन टेक्सटाइल हब्स। तो महाराष्ट्र जब जब तक गुजरात और महाराष्ट्र में डिवाइडेड नहीं था, इट वाज अ बिग हब फॉर टेक्सटाइल्स, राइट। तो वहां पे भी तो एक there are times where there has been a disruption in industrial growth in every part of the world. So even if you say how it hit India, how it hit Europe, how it hit America, every place where industrial revolution reached, and in whatever way, it caused a big disruption, a big change, right? For architecture also, now you had, अगर आप इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन से पहले का सारा टाइम देखोगे, तो you will realize that there was, all they knew was whatever local material they had, or max to max what they could import from any nearby area that they were trading with, but there was nothing else that they could build with. ऐसे कुछ पपिये मशे की बिल्डिंग तो नहीं बना रहे थे, so they had limited options. So by the time you come to the industrial revolution, in our timeline we'll also see when we start with regular lectures कि by the time we came to industrial revolution, बहुत stagnancy था in terms of what kind of material or what styles or what looks or what aesthetics could be there in built form. But then when industrial revolution came, तीन नए products थे. There was iron, glass, and steel, and they were unexplored. There were several possibilities. There were 10,000 things to do with them. Their ample availability was another advantage. कि ऐसे नहीं है कि कुछ नया market में आया है and you just have 2 or 3 limited editions. You have a big stock to use. मतलब ऐसे भी कुछ नहीं है कि आपको बहुत मुश्किल से मिल रहा है, मास प्रोडक्शन हो रहा है, आप जितना चाहिए ले जाओ, ठीक है. सो दैट वाज व्हाट allowed people to experiment more, understand the material, work around it, and then take it forward in different ways, right? So if we look at industrial revolution, like I said, 1760s to 1840s is where you can see in various countries this thing took up, and we see yes, you'll have to bear with this voice. So in England is where you will see that industrial revolution kicked off from in the very beginning. So if you look at industrial revolution, उससे पहले हमारे पास क्या था? We were an agrarian economy. Not just we, but people who wherever these started, or majorly all the countries were not service sector countries. Economy service sector based नहीं थी, economy agriculture based ही थी. हम भी फॉर द हमको भी डेवलपिंग या ऐसे कहा जाता है क्योंकि अभी भी हमारा एग्रीकल्चर कंट्रीब्यूशन बहुत ज्यादा है, इकोनॉमिक कंट्रीब्यूशन एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर से बहुत ज्यादा है, इसीलिए हम लोगों को या हमारी कंट्री को दे आर नॉट एबल टू एक्सेप्ट दैट, या इवन वी आर स्ट्राइविंग मोर एंड मोर फॉर सर्विस सेक्टर डेवलपमेंट और व्हाटएवर. सो बट व्हेन this shift from industry to from agriculture happened, they realized that they needed not just manpower, right, rather human resources, but also slightly skilled human resources. So they needed, so if you look at all the development that happened around industrial revolution, जो थोड़े बहुत भी educated या थोड़े बहुत भी able bodied people थे who were slightly more in a situation where they could move from their homes, there was a lot of migration that was seen. क्योंकि अगर मैंने इंडस्ट्री XYZ जगह पे लगाई है, तो around that area there are this only a specific number of people who live there and can contribute to the industrial work, right? Some of them are owners, some of them are employees, some are managerial positions, but there are only a handful of people who live around that area. But if once, as and when the industry grows, I will need more people to work with me. And in that case, what I will do, these people who already work with me will tell other people in their village ki, oh, there is this very booming business, please come join it. And agriculture is a very dynamic sector. इतने सारे एक्सटर्नलिटीज होते हैं एग्रीकल्चर में कि अगर आपके पास बैकिंग नहीं है तो आप बहुत डेट में जा सकते हो, बहुत डायनामिक सेक्टर होता है. तो ये स्टेबिलिटी विच इंडस्ट्री जॉब कैन गिव यू, दैट there is going to be a monthly wage, these are your set hours you reach at this point of time. Probably people were also व्हेन पीपल रियलाइज्ड कि भाई इंसेंटिव भी चाहिए लोगों को अपने घर से निकल के आके काम करने का, और आपको भी जरूरत है कि दैट पीपल कम फ्रॉम देयर विलेजेस एंड वर्क फॉर यू. So then people started building homes for them. Ki, okay, you have a home on the premises. You will get some food on a daily basis. So they started incentivizing. As and when this started growing, ki, okay, now people kept coming from the villages to work with you. So there was no dearth of people. But now you realize that, okay, they can't live alone their entire life. So people, specifically men, they will get married, they will have children. So the kind of facilities that you need to now give to your employees is also expected to increase. So then you have proper housing complexes that these older companies have. तो अगर आप देखो, every bigger सरकारी unit also, RBI, LIC, ये सब जो बड़े बड़े bigger units that you see, सरकारी giants also, banks and everything, they always have accommodation. पुलिस कॉलोनी होता है, RBI कॉलोनी होता है, इंडस्ट्रियल, जो आप अगर जमशेदपुर देखोगे तो वो तो पूरा ही इंडस्ट्रियल टाउन है. एक टाटा ने वहां जाके सेटल किया और फिर कहा मैं घर भी दूंगा, मैं स्कूल भी दूंगा, मैं सब करूंगा, बस वहां जाके रहो और काम करो मेरे लिए, ठीक है. So then they realized that they had to like develop more infrastructure if they wanted people to stably work there. So this industrial revolution not just led to migration but also urbanization, where you see that infrastructure development with a specific goal is happening, right? So you see urbanization and migration on a very big way. Initially, these people did not have the understanding of what can be the consequences of too many people living and utilizing the same facilities uh, very regularly, right? तो जनरली आज हमारे सिटी का प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि सिटी के उतने ही रिसोर्सेज हैं, ठीक है, पर उसको यूज करने वाले लोग बहुत ज्यादा हैं, राइट? और इसीलिए रिसोर्सेज पे प्रेशर बढ़ता है. तो सिमिलरली, इफ you had planned for 100 people but now those 100 people have gotten married and have child, so then there are more people who are using that resource. So that resource is getting exploited, and hence the management of that resource suffers, right? तो इसीलिए आपने देखा होगा कि you must have heard about a lot of plague, sanitation related issue, pollution related issues, uh, सो एपिडेमिक्स, बहुत सारे डिसीजेस फैले क्योंकि हमारे को वो अंडरस्टैंडिंग ही नहीं था, या हमारा उस लेवल का प्लानिंग ही नहीं था कि इतने सारे लोगों के लिए अगर हाउसिंग फैसिलिटी दी है तो वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट का क्या करोगे, कैसे क्लीन अप होगा, कितने कॉमन टॉयलेट्स, हाउ डू वी हैंडल दिस. सो दैट ऑल्सो लेड टू अ लॉट ऑफ पोल्यूशन. इफ यू हर्ड कि थेम्स का पोल्यूशन, लंदन फायर, इफ यू हैव सीन दैट ब्रिटिश रॉयल्टी वाला शो on Netflix. So then you will know what was happening when Queen Elizabeth came to power and all of these things were wrong. So this is all that was a consequence of industrial revolution that was seen everywhere where the industrial revolution hit. Right, so it had its advantages, but it also had its disadvantages, which can be clearly seen on architecture and planning both. Right, so not just architecture but also planning. So we had new material to explore, very easily available material to explore, but also a lot of planning problems that we had not foreseen at all, right? If we look at it from the architecture perspective, we now had more experiments to create. But like I said, that every time there is a disruptor, every time there is something that is going to change, or put a mark on the history, will always have a opposite movement. ठीक है. तो जैसे मैंने कहा था कि when the machinery came or when the computers came, now we have AI coming in कि every time there's something new, सबकी नौकरी चली जाएगी, people will lose their jobs, there will be no jobs, robot will do everything, computers will do everybody's job, people will not be required. So it's an understanding with every new thing that comes up that it is going to take away our jobs, and that insecurity always leads to people protesting or trying to come up in opposition, getting together in opposition. So industrial revolution ke against me, there were a few movements which were arts and crafts movement, which then developed into art nouveau movement, right? Arts and crafts movement primarily said that um, जो हाथ से or whatever is developed or made or created manually has a uniqueness to it, has a scope of error into it, which industry made or mass produced items will not have. So if you had given me an order कि मुझे एक डाइनिंग टेबल का सेट चाहिए, टेबल एंड 6 chairs. So if I am the carpenter who's going to make it. It is 100% possibility that all the 6 chairs, though identical in design, will not look identical because I have made them with my hands. So there's always going to be some error in how much pressure I've put or how thick or thin I've cut a piece. Whatever, there's going to be some difference because it is made by a person and not by a machine, right? So everything that's human made has a touch, a uniqueness to it, which will be lost if you make something with a machine where everything will look similar, which is also true. So if you look at your commercial buildings today, आपको अगर स्काईलाइन का फोटो दिखेगा ना, तो until and unless there's some building जिसका शेप या स्ट्रक्चर या कुछ अलग है, if there are glass cuboidal buildings, आप यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू आइडेंटिफाई कि ये कौन से शहर का स्काईलाइन है. कोई ना कोई ऐसी एक हाथ बिल्डिंग आ ही जाती है, जैसे न्यूयॉर्क में ट्रम्प टावर दिखता है या मैनहट्टन के कुछ बिल्डिंग्स दिख सकते हैं. तो न्यूयॉर्क स्काईलाइन में कुछ है, एक दो एलिमेंट्स जिससे आपको पता चल जाएगा कि ये न्यूयॉर्क स्काईलाइन है. पर अगर आप इन जनरल, अगर आप किसी भी शहर का स्काईलाइन देखने जाओगे तो बहुत सिमिलर है. कोई कोई आपको, you will not be able to figure out where this standalone glass building is. While if you look at any historic building, when you look at the photograph, you will know this is this building situated XYZ. But with a glass cuboid building, you will not be able to place it if it is in Mumbai or Gurgaon or New York or wherever, right? Because it all looks the same, right? Under say it might be different, it might have some smart infrastructure added to it or anything, but on the outside, all same, right? So that is what arts and crafts movement was trying to protest against. This is going to ruin the uniqueness out of architecture and should not be like looked at as a very potentially beneficial thing, right? But yeah, because of this new revolution we had something, so जैसे हमारे यहाँ ट्रेड आर्किटेक्चर एक्सपोज होते रहते हैं. सो वन ऑफ द एक्सपोज में जोसेफ पैक्सटन हैड पुट अप अ क्रिस्टल पैलेस which is a glass made building where he said कि this is also a potential material which can be used to make a very flexible open big space that allows a lot of sunlight in and allows you to adapt to a lot many functions than just one, right? So Crystal Palace was one such prototype that he had exhibit, that he had put up in London, which became so popular and was picked up in such a big way that it stayed for a very long time, even after the expo was over. Then, of course, later on they uh, dismantled it, so it's not there anymore. But yeah, it was there for a very long time for people to like see. So yes, Industrial Revolution gave us something as great as Golden Gate Bridge, Eiffel Tower. Even Eiffel Tower was one such experiment where they said कि क्या यूज है इस चीज का. अब you are now that in that phase in your country where you try to develop landmarks, कि जैसे हमने जो स्टैचू ऑफ यूनिटी बनाया है, it has it has a purpose, but mean it's developed as a tourist destination, but it has more political and social context. It's not something that was required for you to construct. उसके बिना भी सब ठीक ही था, राइट? ऐसे तो हिस्टोरिकली जब कुछ बिल्डिंग बनाया जाता था तो वो उसके डिजाइन या उसके स्केल या किसी कारण से वो हिस्टोरिक हो जाता था या लैंडमार्क बन जाता था. यू डिड नॉट स्टार्ट विथ आई एम गोइंग टू क्रिएट अ लैंडमार्क या रेड फोर्ट या कोई भी और बिल्डिंग आपने ये सोच के नहीं बनाई थी कि मैं लैंडमार्क बना रहा हूँ, बट समथिंग लाइक अ बुर्ज खलीफा was made with the idea that I'm out there to make a mark on the world. Similarly, Eiffel Tower was also one such exhibit that they had planned कि इस मटेरियल को यूज करके हम क्या गजब बना सकते हैं. That is our trial. They were not out to make a landmark so important that then the entire city was remodeled to fit to that one landmark, right? उसके पहले also city existed. But then what they did was according to Eiffel Tower, they remodeled the entire city. कि सब जगह से Eiffel Tower दिखना चाहिए, पेड़ों की हाइट, घरों की हाइट, सब कुछ ऐसे मैनेज किया that Eiffel Tower का नजारा cannot go away from your eyes, right? So these are all the things that industrial revolution could allow us to do, and that is what, so it has allowed us to do a lot of things. ये engineering marvel है golden gate bridge. So अगर क्लियर स्काई है जिस दिन आपको ये देखने को मिलता है, और सैन फ्रांसिस्को में बहुत सारे लोग बस इधर से उधर इसीलिए करते हैं क्योंकि उनको इस ब्रिज को देखना होता है, राइट? बट या देर आर वेरी टफ डेज वेयर ज्यादातर इतना क्लाउड कवर होता है कि नहीं दिख पाता है, बट हाँ, देर आर सम गुड डेज इन सैन फ्रांसिस्को एंड यू कैन गो वॉच द गोल्डन गेट ब्रिज. सब लोग उसके एक जगह फोटो पॉइंट भी है जहाँ खड़े होके फोटो वोटो खिंचवाते हैं. सो या इट्स अ वेरी पॉपुलर, इट्स एन इंजीनियरिंग मार्वल बट ऑल्सो पॉपुलर लैंडमार्क फॉर द सिटी. Right. So this is how industrial revolution changed the way we look at architecture. We make buildings and we think about architecture. Similarly, even modern art. So, agar आप fine arts, contemporary arts, if you follow the art scene, painting, sculpting, um, uh, for that matter, even म्यूजिक. सो ये जो सारा लिबरल आर्ट्स और मॉडर्न आर्ट का जो सेक्टर है, even that had a lot of impact on architecture. Because if you see in early days, when you go to Renaissance and even Greek or Roman time पे, architect नहीं होता था. There was no person called architect who was educated to make something. These were sculptors or painters who understood proportion and material that they are working with. That is why they were trusted to make buildings. They were not trained architects per se, right? This as a discipline came very later, very late, right? तो इसीलिए आप देखोगे कि बहुत सारे लोग आर्ट सीन से ही आ रहे हैं. ठीक है, अभी भी when after pursuing architecture, people move on to a lot of things. They move on to photography, retail design. Some people do fashion design, product design. Then we also have furniture design, lighting. There is a lot that people pursue after their basic education in architecture, right? So there is a lot of relationship between art and architecture as well. तो व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट आर्ट, तो मॉडर्न आर्ट, पेंटिंग में आने वाले अलग अलग फेजेस. सो जैसे आर्किटेक्चर चेंज हुआ इन सो मेनी फेजेस, इन क्लासिकल आर्किटेक्चर, मॉडर्न कॉन्टेम्पररी आर्किटेक्चर, सिमिलरली इवन द आर्ट सीन केप्ट चेंजिंग. ठीक है, तो यू मस्ट हैव सीन कि अभी लेटेस्टली इफ यू आर ऑन इंस्टाग्राम रील्स, आपने वो नाइफ पेंटिंग का वो देखा होगा. आई डोंट नो इफ दैट्स वेरी कॉन्टेम्पररी. मैंने वो नया नया देखना चालू किया, सो इट्स वेरी न्यू फॉर मी. But yeah, so there are a lot of things that you see, that there are different mediums that people are exploring to make art also. All of that movement or that change in paintings and sculpting and all of those art scenes also has an impact on architecture. So आपका ये wallpaper लगाना, indie wallpapers. So you will see that now the celebrities have palm trees and village scenes wale wallpapers in their London homes and all of that. Then they have these Mughal motifs wale wallpapers in their powder rooms and stuff like that. क्योंकि ये सारा प्रिंट ये टेक्सटाइल में भी पॉपुलर होता है, फिर ये आर्ट में, ये पेंटिंग में भी पॉपुलर होता है, फिर धीरे धीरे इट मेक्स इट वे टू आर्किटेक्चर ऑल्सो. देन द वे योर लाइटिंग, वो शैंडलियर में जो ग्लास कवर्स होते हैं उनमें भी ये सब चेंज आता है. सो देर इज अ लॉट दैट हैपेंस व्हेन देर इज मूवमेंट इन एनी काइंड ऑफ आर्ट सीन, right? So this was art nouveau movement, where you say that art and craft said ki no, you have to stick to like uniqueness of people designing it, but art nouveau said that okay, we agree that there is going to be this change, there is going to be new material, there is going to be a lot of new things that are going to happen, but we want to retain the uniqueness of architecture, and we want to merge and use these things so that the uniqueness stays. So if you look at all the three photographs, they utilize all the new product available, but they all look very different and unique, right? So they stuck to कि नहीं एक जैसा क्यों दिखेगा, we'll do something so that it looks different. So there is a lot of asymmetry, curves, the wallpaper like facade, or utilizing brick, stone and the new product, so utilizing the existing and the new iron, glass, steel wala thing into your building. All of this is experimented with during the art nouveau movement. right? This was more popular in USA and Europe. And yes, dynamism, asymmetry, and this was at its peak when World War One hit. Again, society, political changes, इन सब का भी बहुत फर्क पड़ता है आर्किटेक्चर पे. I always suggest a TED talk by a girl in Syria. That TED talk is called "How Syria's Architecture Played a Part in Encouraging the Civil War that led to such a big disaster in that particular, for those people, Syrian people." So how architecture can, promote or encourage dividing people and keeping separate. So that is a good TED talk which talks about कि कैसे आप अनजाने में भी किसी चीज को encourage कर सकते हो. ठीक है. तो World War I or World War II, so 14 to 18 was World War I, and then 39 to 45 was World War II, और 45 के बाद 2-3 साल रहे, which is Cold War time, when people were not really fighting with arms and guns, and they were not really like on the battlefield fighting, but trading restrictions or तुम इसको मत दो तुम उसको मत दो was happening, right? So there was a lot of hum, so there was a lot of fighting on in terms of uh, strategical fighting, right? So that was the Cold War period. In both during both these world wars, what was seen was, एक तो we were a colony both the world wars के time पे, so we were dragged into these wars, not wanting to be or directly being a part, but yeah, we were dragged into these wars. Those wars caused a lot of problem for us also economically, and these wars also led to a lot of destruction in the countries who were actually the participants of the war. तो अगर आप देखोगे कि 14 to 18 के टाइम पे देयर वाज अ लॉट ऑफ डिसरप्शन इन द वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर, और वंस द World War I गॉट ओवर, बहुत सारी कंट्रीज को बहुत फटाफट डेवलपमेंट की जरूरत थी, सो दैट दे कुड हैव अ इकोनॉमिक रिकॉइल, राइट? उनको वापस से दे हैड टू गेट बैक इनटू एक्शन सो दैट दे कुड गो अहेड एंड रिकवर फ्रॉम द लॉसेस ऑफ द वॉर. ठीक है. सो व्हेन आर्ट नोवो केम इनटू पिक्चर, और व्हेन इट वाज एट its peak, right then was the world war hit, right? When we talk about art nouveau, Victor Horta is one of the major personalities that we discuss. He was the father of art nouveau. So if you look at, he majorly worked in residences, and most of his residences are UNESCO World Heritage Sites and boutique hotels, right? So using ऐसे glass with very vegetal ornamentation, curvy linear lines, very delicate, light colored, pretty flowers, vines, and very delicate design was his deal, right? And he used all the new material, but he kept it also very flexible, open with the new material, but also not losing the old world charm to his designs. So if you look at the Tassel House, सारा material है contemporary, but it doesn't look like an outright contemporary building. And when you look at the interiors also, it is very unique if you look at it. Right? So Victor Horta is one of the very important people in Art Nouveau. Another guy is Anthony Gaudi. If you go to Barcelona and if you have not clicked one of your pictures against Casa Batlló, fail. You've not been to Barcelona. Right? So Barcelona is the place where Anthony Gaudi did most of his work because he was there due to Sagrada Familia. That was his dream project, that which he could not see finish complete, but yes, he put his heart and soul into it. He was a very religious person, so he put his heart and soul into Sagrada Familia, because of which he could not move out of Barcelona a lot and worked in Barcelona quite a lot. So you can see Victor Horta jaisa, that curve thing, colored glass, colored ऐसे wallpaperish flowery design वाला facade, a lot of uh, iron and glass use, so mosaic, all of that was what Anthony Gaudi also. So vegetal organic architecture is what we work towards when we talk about Anthony Gaudi's work as well, right? Yeah, and then there are other examples also. So if you look at Charlene Mackintosh's work or Hanker House in Brussels, you can see wo jo frescoes or say Roman painting in the facade. So again, keeping the old world charm, but also utilizing the newer material was what Art Nouveau stood for. Similar was Buffard movement, which was utilizing the new material, but also keeping the grandiosity of the older older buildings of Renaissance and Baroque and Rococo. So if you look at Baroque and Rococo and you look at Buffard buildings, you will see that they're very similar, but they also utilize the newer material. So all your major administrative and public buildings, so opera houses, museums, railway station, city halls, all of them undertook a very grand designing with the new material and old world charm to attract people to them and to look into what the administration or to connect basically government and people. They tried to do it so that people felt that they belonged in these places. So Daniel Burnham is one person who worked with Goof Art movement. You can see that there is a very form follow function type of a design where they are utilizing the old material and the new material both. But yes, there is a size skyscrapers, bigger buildings, very basic design, open planning, all of that. So Daniel Burnham and also Louis Sullivan, these people were Chicago based architects who did a good work in getting modernism and form follows function to commercial buildings. Okay, so cool. I will rest my demo lecture here and I will allow now the exam assured coordinators to take you forward with all the other details about the exam, the paper, etc., etc. And then, yeah, hopefully we'll get to see each other when the actual lectures begin.